Hey, welcome to 10 Minute Apologetics. Thank you once again for checking this out. My goal is to provide you with quick and not over your head arguments and reasons to share with other people about the existence of God and Jesus and who he is and that he was who he said he was. And when people ask you questions, you feel equipped to answer those questions. We are moving on to actual arguments for the existence of God and things more of that nature. And I'm not going to get into a lot of details in each of these things. It's going to be sort of an overview, but I'll also give you links if you want to dive more into this. I don't feel like in answering questions you should try to know everything about everything, but maybe you can pick one thing that interests you and sort of become an expert or really good at explaining it, or maybe a couple things. One of the first things I was exposed to, or first arguments, is called the Cosmological Argument. And it's basically an argument for the existence of God. And it starts basically with two premises and then a conclusion. And it's called a syllogism or a deductive argument that basically means if the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. And so a person arguing with it has to attack one of the premises because it's a logically valid argument. So, or they can attack the validity of the argument, but this is a sound and valid argument. So, premise one is everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Premise two is the universe began to exist. Therefore, the conclusion, therefore, the universe has a cause of its existence. Now, all of those things are true. The premises are true. Then the conclusion must be true. What is premise one again? Everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Now, you have to be careful because there's something when you're debating or even just discussing with non-believers, there's a tactic they may use, and it's called a straw man. And a straw man is when somebody makes a misrepresentation of your argument in order to more easily defeat it. An example of this in this particular argument is someone might say, in fact, I've heard a lot of atheists say this, oh, well, if everything has a cause of its existence, then what caused God to come into existence? Well, think about that. Is the argument everything has a cause of its existence? No. It's everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Did God begin to exist? No. By definition, God has always existed, and we're going to get to actually why we can know that's true. Otherwise, they might think it's just a cop-out, but be careful of that. They'll say everything begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Well, that's not what we're saying. So you need to be very clear. Everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. And just think about it. What comes from nothing? Nothing comes from nothing. Everything that you can think of, everything in science, everything that begins to exist has a cause. You don't see ripples in a stream without a rock or something, water bug or something being thrown into it to cause that to happen. And so the question is, did the universe then begin to exist? Well, that's what science tells us. In fact, the Big Bang is a discovery basically somewhere around the 1920s. Well, Einstein came up with a theory of general relativity, and Edwin Hubble was looking through a telescope, and he was looking at stars and things very, very far away. And what he discovered is they had this reddish color, and it's called the redshift. And that basically means, on the color spectrum, it means things are all moving away. And no matter what star he looked at, or distant galaxies and things like that, they would have that reddish color. And that means everything is moving away from a central point. That means our universe is expanding. And if it's expanding, it had to have a beginning point. And there, obviously, when this Big Bang Theory first came out, a lot of people were against it. And no, it wasn't Christians, because what does God say? The very first words of the Bible, in the beginning. The Bible makes a scientific prediction that the universe had a beginning. Aristotle and Greek philosophers and all since then, there was this assumption that the universe was infinite. Well, it couldn't have been infinite. But atheists were very concerned when they came out with the Big Bang Theory that there must be some other explanation for it, because the beginning of the universe implies that there had to be a beginner, something outside of the universe that caused it to come into being. And so the Big Bang is the friend of a Christian, because it implies that there was a big banger, or someone to create the Big Bang in the universe because it had a beginning. Just to kind of simplify, and you can think, is there such a thing? I mean, maybe the universe is infinite. Well, scientifically, that's disproven by the Big Bang. And there have been other theories people have tried to come up with. But the reality is the universe had a beginning in the Big Bang. But if you even think about what if the universe was infinite, you come up with a lot of logical contradictions. And I'll give you a better description by William Lane Craig, because Dr. Craig actually is probably the foremost person associated with the Cosmological Argument, and he explains it better than anyone else. So if you want to dive deeper into this, I highly recommend his work. But there's no such thing as an actual infinite. I mean, if you start counting now, and then let me know when you get to infinity. You'll never get there. So could the universe have an infinite past? Well, to have an infinite past, you'd have to have an infinite series of events leading up to today. And if that was true, if the past was truly infinite, we would never actually arrive at today. If you can follow that, great. If you can't, that's okay. You could read. Dr. Craig gives a lot of absurdities, but there's no such thing as an actual infinite. In mathematics and sort of theoretical, there's infinites that people deal with, but there's not an actual infinite series of anything that actually exists. There's a potential infinite, and the universe can go on potentially infinitely, but we will never get to that point to say, we've reached it, because infinity is infinity. It's kind of a strange phenomenon. So everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. The universe began to exist, and that's proven by the Big Bang and the redshift of galaxies, and it's pretty much accepted by mainstream science, as much as many would like to find a way around it. And they have tried to come up with things, but they've been disproven since then, like an oscillating universe where it's going in and out and expanding and contracting. Another thing that proves that the universe is expanding is the second law of thermodynamics, which is also called the law of increasing entropy, which basically means the universe is running out of usable energy. I mean, imagine if you start at this infinitely dense point called the singularity, and that's where all of time and space began. Not just space exploded from the Big Bang, but time itself did not exist prior to the Big Bang. In fact, there was no prior to the Big Bang because there was no time then. It's kind of crazy to even think about, but it points us to our conclusion. The universe has a cause of its existence. So now the problem is, and people might say this, well, what is the cause? Just showing that something has a cause, the universe has a cause, big deal. You can't tell me that that cause is God. I mean, it could be anything. You know, is there anything? Or it could be like a deistic God. A God of deism is basically, deism means that some higher power created the universe, created all the laws of physics and everything to make it run, and then just left and does other things, and he's not a personal God. So is there something about the universe or about the Big Bang or all of this are there things we could infer or understand about who this cause might be? Well, first, the cause must be spaceless and timeless, because it caused space and time to come into being. So it must transcend or go beyond space and time. The cause must be immaterial. Since the universe is made up of matter and energy, whatever created the universe can't be made up of matter and energy. It had to have created those things. So what is an immaterial and spaceless, timeless thing? Well, it would be a mind. It itself must be uncaused, because cause and effect rely on time and space to even exist. And so it must be a causeless or uncaused, immaterial, spaceless, timeless, unimaginably powerful to create all of matter and energy. And it also must be personal, because this cause made a decision to create the universe, and it could have made a decision not to create the universe. So it had a choice. It had a will, which means it's personal. It's a personal mind that's spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, and unimaginably powerful. Now, when you think about all of those qualifications, what comes to mind? I think it's obvious that it's God. How do we know it's the Christian God? Well, now that's a good question. This doesn't lead us to the Christian God. It leads us to understanding that there is a personal God, a theistic God, And we have to do further investigation to determine who this God is. And we will definitely talk in a future episode about how we can know who this God is through evidence. And so, just as a review, the Kalam Cosmological Argument, premise 1, everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Conclusion, therefore, the universe has a cause of its existence. And this cause is spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, unimaginably powerful, and personal. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.